The nurse who once saved lives in Afghanistan blew up a helicopter to save the Mafia boss. Matteo was bleeding beside her. Rico's men were firing from the house. A sniper helicopter dropped low over the estate, hunting for the perfect shot. Lucia had not fired a weapon in 7 years, but her body remembered war before her mind could object. She grabbed a fallen guard's pistol, aimed at the fuel tank, and emptied the clip. The sky exploded. In the fire and chaos, she dragged Matteo toward the panic room, proving that she was not just the woman who saved his life in an ER. She was the woman who could survive his world. Let us begin with Lucia Chin, an ER nurse and single mother working another midnight shift on almost no sleep. She is getting through the night on cold coffee and muscle memory, moving between broken bones, panic attacks, and the usual late-night emergencies. When the glass doors suddenly burst open, 8 men in tailored suits rush in, led by a scarred enforcer, carrying Matteo Romano, the most feared crime boss in the city, bleeding heavily across their arms. To Lucia, he is not a legend or a monster in that moment. He is a man dying in front of her, and she has no idea that saving him will tear her quiet life apart. In seconds, the emergency room changes completely. Nurses back away. Patients go silent. The lead gunman does not fire a single shot, but his voice is enough to freeze the room. He turns on Dr. Morrison, whose hands start shaking as soon as he sees the wounds. Romano has been hit 3 times, and the message is clear: if he dies, everyone in that room pays for it. While the others fall into panic, Lucia goes still. Her fear does not disappear, but something older rises over it. Afghanistan. Combat tense. Blood on sand. People screaming for help. Her body remembers what to do before her mind can argue. There is a bitter kind of irony in it. After Ethan was born, Lucia left the military behind and chose hospital scrubs, hoping the rhythm of ordinary medicine would quiet the memories of war. But the past is not gone just because we stop speaking about it. It waits for a sound, a smell, a moment. On the gurney lies Matteo Romano, 35 years old, his pulse fading fast. Dr. Morrison may be brilliant in a controlled operating room, but with a gunman breathing down his neck, he breaks. He asks for more time. The monitor answers with a flatline. For 1 terrible second, nobody moves. The room seems to hold its breath. The lieutenant raises his weapon, and Lucia moves before she can think too hard about the danger. She pushes past the frozen surgeon, checks for a pulse, then tears open Romano's shirt with steady hands. Her voice cuts through the panic as she orders a terrified resident to bring a chest tray, suction, and clamps. Morrison tries to stop her, but she does not have time to protect his pride. The problem is clear: cardiac tamponade. Blood is squeezing the heart inside his chest. Romano has maybe 2 minutes left, and Lucia treats the room like a battlefield. Lucia does something no one expects. She turns the armed men from a threat into extra hands. A nervous kid barely out of his teens, and gives him one simple job: hold pressure and do not move. The task steadies him. Then she cuts between Romano's ribs. Morrison recoils horrified, but Lucia keeps working. She finds the collapsed lung, the trapped blood, the pressure around the heart. His heart is drowning inside his own chest. She opens the sack and releases it. The monitor flickers, once, twice. Then a weak rhythm returns, thin but alive. With her fingers still inside a dying man's chest and a gun pointed somewhere behind her, Lucia keeps her voice level. She pulls the scattered medical team back into order, turning panic into procedure and one command at a time. When she finally steps away and peels off her blood-stained gloves, the worst of the immediate danger is past. Rico, the lieutenant, lowers his weapon. The look he gives her has changed. There is respect in it now, but also calculation. He asks her name. Then he says his boss will want to thank her properly. Only then does Lucia hear the name clearly: Matteo Romano. At first, the name means almost nothing to Lucia. Then she sees the faces around her, the way nurses avoid looking at the bed, the way Morrison's mouth goes dry, the way security keeps their distance. By 4 a.m, the ICU no longer feels like part of a hospital. It feels occupied. Armed men stand at the doors. Phones are watched. Hallways have gone quiet in the wrong way. Lucia tries to finish her charts with 2 guards near her shoulder. But the adrenaline is leaving her body now, and her hands are beginning to shake. Rico appears beside her without a sound. Rico pulls a chair close enough to invade her space. A small reminder that he is used to making people uncomfortable. Lucia does not flinch. 3 tours in Afghanistan have left her with a high tolerance for men who think silence and proximity are weapons. When he asks where she learned to cut open a chest like that, she tells him the truth. She was a combat medic. She left because her 7-year-old son, Ethan, needed a mother, not a folded flag. Rico studies her, irritated by how little she bends. Then he tells her the shooting was not random. Someone close to Romano helped set it up. Rico circles the idea carefully, suggesting Lucia might have been involved simply because she was there. The accusation is so absurd she almost laughs. She turns to leave, and he grabs her wrist. It is a mistake. Lucia breaks the hold with practiced ease and looks him dead in the eye. He is not questioning her because he has evidence. He is questioning her because he failed to protect his boss and needs somewhere to put the blame. Rico's expression hardens, but she walks away anyway. Outside the room, hospital administrators are already waiting, pale and sweating, ready to make the night even worse. Richard Voss, the hospital director, is more concerned with liability than with the fact that Lucia just kept an entire emergency room alive under armed threat. He talks about protocols, reports, and possible consequences, as if paperwork can make sense of what happened. Lucia answers him with a tired, sharp calm. Then room 3 erupts behind them. Matteo Romano is awake. His eyes are dark with pain, but the awareness in them is immediate. Voss freezes mid-sentence. The director is terrified of procedure collapsing. Lucia is looking at a wounded crime boss who has already started measuring the room. The first real confrontation between Lucia and Matteo is quiet, but everyone feels it. For 3 seconds, he studies the exhausted woman standing there in blood-streaked scrubs. Most people would lower their eyes. Lucia does not. She tells him to stay still before he tears his stitches open. To her, he is not a king, not a myth, not a man to worship or fear. He is a difficult patient who needs to stop moving. Instead of exploding, Matteo looks amused. He asks her name, repeats it slowly, then declares that she is under his protection now. The words land like a warning. Before the sedatives pull him under again, Matteo makes a quiet promise that visibly unsettles his own men. Rico explains what Lucia already suspects in Matteo's world. A life debt is not a polite thank you. It is a binding thing, a chain dressed up as honor. Lucia steps into the cold October morning at 6, her body drained and her hands still trembling from what she has done. She only wants to go back to her small life, an old car, overdue bills, a sleeping child, a few hours of peace. But somewhere behind her, Matteo Romano has already decided that her life now touches his. All Lucia wants is ordinary survival: pick Ethan up from soccer, buy pizza, get home, sleep. Instead, after a brutal 12-hour shift, she finds her car blocked by an unmarked black sedan. Detectives Sarah Brennan and Miguel Ortiz are waiting near the hood like they have been there a while. They do not look impressed by the fact that she saved a dying man. To them, Matteo Romano is not a patient. He is a case, a target, a threat. Lucia tells them she only did her job. Brennan reminds her that the law has its own version of duty, and it is rarely gentle. The trap begins tightening around her before Lucia fully understands it. She repeats that she acted as a nurse, but the detectives see something more useful than innocence. Brennan shows her surveillance footage. Matteo holding her wrist, one of his men leaning close to whisper in her ear, Lucia standing in the middle of their guarded circle. To the police, it looks like contact. To Matteo's world, it may already look like ownership. Lucia stares at the screen and feels her own story being taken from her. She knows what happened, but she also knows how easily a picture can be made to say something else. when Ortiz suggests she work undercover against Romano. Lucia lets out a tired, bitter laugh. She has just watched armed men threaten an entire emergency room. She knows exactly what that world is capable of. Brennan offers state protection, but Lucia points out the obvious. They could not even prevent Romano from being shot 3 times. That is when Brennan changes tactics. She brings up Ethan, Lucia's 7-year-old son, and the custody fight already hanging over her life. The threat is not loud. It does not need to be. It lands exactly where Lucia is most vulnerable. Brennan lowers her voice, making the pressure feel even colder. She paints a picture of Lucia as a single mother, working nights, while a criminal organization watches her movements. Anthony, Lucia's ex-husband, could use her military past and trauma against her in court. Lucia fought hard for shared custody, and that fragile balance could vanish quickly. Ortiz plays the softer part, saying cooperation might help protect her arrangement with Ethan. Brennan gives her 48 hours. Lucia calls it blackmail. Brennan calls it justice. The word sounds wrong in the parking lot, under the weak morning light, with Lucia's hands still smelling faintly of antiseptic and blood. Brennan tries one last angle, describing Romano as a man who destroys families. Lucia hears the words, but all she can think about is Ethan. After the detectives leave, their business card sits in her hand like a threat she cannot throw away. Then her phone rings. It is Anthony, asking her to pick Ethan up early, and the timing feels too neat to be coincidence. Lucia is now caught between 2 forces, a crime boss who claims to protect her, and police officers who want to use her. By the time she reaches Ethan at 3:15, exhaustion has eaten through almost every defense she has. Ethan runs to her with the bright, breathless energy of a child, talking proudly about soccer and a goal he almost made. Lucia pulls him close and holds him a little too tightly, using the warmth of him to steady herself. Even he has learned to speak carefully about his father, using the forced fairness children develop when they are trapped between adults. Then an unknown number calls. It is Patricia Knowles, Lucia's lawyer, and her voice is calm in a way that immediately makes Lucia's stomach tighten. She needs to see Lucia urgently. Not tomorrow, today. Patricia insists they meet by 5. No small talk, no reassurance, only the clipped tone of someone trying not to alarm a client too much over the phone. Lucia looks at Ethan, absorbed in a screen, unaware that the ground beneath their life is starting to crack. She leaves him with someone she trusts and drives across town, with her jaw clenched so tightly it hurts. In Patricia's office, the documents are already laid out. Anthony is petitioning for sole custody, claiming Lucia has exposed their son to violent criminals. The betrayal is precise, legal, and brutally timed. The name at the center of the petition is Matteo Romano. Lucia can barely breathe as she reads it. Less than 24 hours have passed since the ER incident. There has been no media coverage, no public report. So how did Anthony know? The answer points straight back to Brennan and Ortiz. Someone has already handed enough information to hurt her. Lucia keeps saying she only did her job, as if repeating it can restore the world to sense. Patricia listens, but her face tells the truth. In court, intention matters less than what can be made to look convincing. Patricia gives Lucia the hard version of the truth. The judge will not only ask what happened. The judge will ask how it appears from the outside. She asks whether Lucia has had any contact with Romano or his men since the ER. Lucia thinks of the dark cars, the silent watchers, the feeling of being observed even when she is alone. Anthony is also using her military history against her, framing her PTSD as a danger to Ethan. Even a nightmare Ethan once comforted her through has been turned into evidence. Lucia sits there, stunned by how intimate the attack feels. A child's act of comfort has been twisted into proof that Lucia is unstable. The realization leaves her cold. Anthony has not thrown these accusations together in anger. He has built them carefully, piece by piece. Matteo's men now hovering near her life. Patricia admits the case has become dangerous. Lucia's thoughts begin to race. The detectives, the custody petition, the impossible speed of it all. The pressure is coming from every direction at once. The police want her to spy. The Mafia wants her silence. Her ex-husband wants her son. And everyone has found the same weak point, Ethan. Patricia is clear about what must happen next. Lucia has to cut off all contact with Matteo Romano immediately. No visits, no calls, no favors, no protection that can be traced back to him. It sounds simple when spoken across a lawyer's desk, but Lucia knows better. You cannot simply walk away from a man who has decided, without asking, that you are now under his protection. She picks Ethan up later, with her thoughts spinning so hard she misses 2 turns on the way home. Ethan notices. Of course he does. Children notice fear long before adults admit it is in the room. Ethan asks if she and Dad are fighting again, and the question hits harder than Lucia expects. When he says he will tell the judge she is a good mom, her throat almost closes. 2 days later, she tries to avoid Romano completely by staying in the cardiac ward. Far from the ICU and the men guarding it, she keeps her head down and tells herself distance will help. But Rico finds her anyway. At first, he is almost polite, delivering Matteo's request to see her. When she refuses, the politeness drains away. He tells her Matteo will come to her instead, stitches or not. Under pressure, Lucia agrees to give Matteo 5 minutes and not 1 second more. His hospital room has been transformed into something that barely resembles a hospital room at all. Fresh flowers, expensive art, private guards, quiet luxury placed over the smell of disinfectant. Matteo is recovering faster than she expected, his eyes fixed on her with unnerving focus. He invites her to sit, using charm like another kind of weapon. Lucia refuses the softness of it. She reminds him that he is a violent man with violent enemies. Matteo does not deny it. That honesty bothers her more than a lie would have. Matteo admits she is not wrong about him, but he calls the surveillance protection. He asks about her past, not casually, but like a man trying to understand what kind of person stays steady in a room full of guns. When she tells him she was a combat medic in Afghanistan, something shifts in his expression. Recognition, maybe respect, maybe something more dangerous. Lucia insists they are nothing alike, yet both of them know what it means to make life or death decisions before fear has time to catch up. Then Matteo offers her $4 million. Lucia reacts as if he has put a loaded weapon on the table. Matteo explains that his enemies may come after her to hurt him. The money, he says, would give her options. Lucia hears something else. She hears an anchor, a way to pull her deeper into his world and make gratitude look like obligation. When she asks how he knows about Ethan, Matteo calmly reveals the reach of his information. The custody battle, Anthony, her work schedule, the corners of her life she thought were still private. To Matteo, the debt between them is not emotional, it is almost legal. Lucia says they are even. He only smiles as if she has misunderstood the rules. In the sterile hospital room, with the heart monitor ticking steadily beside them, Lucia looks Matteo in the eye and refuses the money. Matteo respects the defiance. But respect does not make him safe. He tells her his protection is already in place, ignoring every boundary she tries to set. Lucia demands control over her own life. For the first time, his polished calm slips, and she sees the colder instincts underneath. Then he mentions Anthony, the police, the pressure on her custody case. Lucia goes quiet. He knows too much. And the worst part is that some of what he knows could actually help her. Matteo looks at Lucia with a sincerity that feels almost real. though she no longer trusts herself to judge him clearly. He tells her trust is rare in his world, and right now she is one of only 3 people he trusts. When she asks who the other 2 are, he admits he is no longer sure. After she leaves, Rico questions why they are wasting men on a civilian who does not even want help. Mateo sees her refusal as proof that she cannot be bought. Rico sees the same thing as a weakness. Neither of them says aloud that Lucia has already become important. After Rico leaves, Mateo orders Lucia watched more closely. He tells himself it is protection, but he is also using her as bait to expose whoever fed information to Anthony. The money she refused remains on the table between them, long after she is gone. It unsettles him. He has spent his life believing everyone has a price, and Lucia has made that belief less certain. Soon his presence begins reshaping her days. A black car appears on Tuesday. Another waits near Ethan's school on Wednesday. By Thursday night, in a dark parking garage, Lucia's body reacts before her mind knows why. Every nerve tells her to run. The underground garage feels wrong from the moment Lucia steps out of the elevator. The yellow lights buzz overhead. Her footsteps echo too loudly. No headlight surges straight toward her. Her combat reflexes take over. She dives between parked cars just as metal scrapes past her jacket. She scrambles toward the stairwell, keys clenched uselessly between her fingers. Then 2 gunshots crack through the garage. The SUV blows a tire and slams into a concrete pillar. Lucia hits the ground hard, trapped between burning rubber, gunfire, and the sudden knowledge that this is not intimidation anymore. The smell of smoke, the blast of noise, the hard concrete beneath her palms, all of it drags Lucia back to Kandahar. Her chest tightens. For half a second, the garage is not a garage. Then Rico grabs her arm and pulls her up, firing as he shouts for Marco to get her out. She stumbles down the stairwell and into an escape car. Sophia, the driver, does not waste a word. She tears out of the garage at dangerous speed, calm as stone. Lucia checks herself for injuries and finds none. Her body is intact. Inside, something has cracked open. Sophia explains the situation with chilling calm. A rival Salvatore faction is testing for weakness after the attack on Matteo. Because Lucia saved him, she has become part of the message they want to send. Killing her would be easier than kidnapping her, Sophia says, almost clinically. Lucia's phone rings before she can answer. Matteo's voice is tight with anger as he orders her to a safe house. When Lucia panics about Ethan, Matteo says his people picked the boy up 20 minutes ago. The words hit her like a physical blow. He has moved the most important person in her life without asking. Lucia screams that he took her son. Matteo answers with cold logic. Ethan was exposed, and he had to be moved before the enemy reached him. In his mind, it is simple protection. To Lucia, it is a kidnapping dressed in good intentions. He tells her to be angry but alive. The sentence only makes her shake harder. Before she can fully grasp the prison forming around her, the car pulls into a secured building in River North. The penthouse is luxurious, silent, sealed from the outside world. It has soft carpets, locked doors, armed guards, and her frightened child waiting inside. Ethan looks very small on the expensive leather sofa, clutching his backpack with both hands. A guard is trying to talk to him about soccer as if this is a normal afternoon. But Ethan's eyes are wet and fixed on the door. When Lucia comes in, he launches himself into her arms. She holds him so tightly he squeaks. Then she loosens her grip and whispers that they are safe. The words feel false in her mouth. They are alive, yes, but they are surrounded by guards, rules, cameras, and doors she cannot open on her own. It is protection that feels far too much like captivity. Sophia gives Lucia the choice in the bluntest terms possible. Stay in the penthouse, or risk ending up shot and dumped in the river. When the locks close behind her, Lucia stands at the window, staring down at the city lights with her body still wired for danger. Behind her, Ethan watches television too loudly, using cartoons to pretend this is all less frightening than it is. The penthouse is beautiful, but beauty does not change what it is. Over the next 72 hours, Ethan slowly adapts to the guards and the strange rules. Lucia does not. Every quiet hour makes the walls feel closer. While Ethan plays cards with one of the guards, Lucia paces until her legs ache. She calls Patricia, leaves messages, checks the news, and tries not to think about the gang war moving outside the penthouse walls. On the fourth night at 11, Marco arrives with an urgent message. Matteo is having heart trouble and refuses to see any doctor except her. To go with Marco, Lucia has to leave Ethan sleeping under the watch of the same people holding them there. Every part of her resists it. Still, she gets into the car. The drive ends at a heavily guarded estate outside Evanston, lit like a fortress. Lucia is led through marble halls into a quiet wood-paneled study. Matteo sits near the fire, pale but upright, while older lieutenants discuss retaliation with the calm of men talking business. He dismisses them the moment Lucia enters. Rico leaves last, visibly annoyed. Once they are alone, Lucia demands to know what is really happening. Matteo closes his laptop and admits there was no medical emergency. He lied because it was the only way to get her there. Without Rico listening, Lucia stares at him furious. Matteo does not apologize fast enough. In his world, even a conversation has to be smuggled past someone's suspicion. Matteo forces himself straighter, despite the damage to his chest, still trying to look stronger than he is. He tells Lucia the hospital attack was planned from inside his own circle. Someone knew his route, his security gaps, his medical condition. Lucia refuses a drink, so Matteo drinks both glasses of whiskey himself, more for control than pleasure. He trusts almost no one now, not his lieutenants, not his advisors, maybe not even Rico. Yet somehow he is talking to the woman who saved his life and keeps rejecting everything he offers. That seems to confuse him more than betrayal. Matteo explains his plan. His weakness is partly real, but he intends to use it. If the traitor believes he is fading, that person may move too soon. Matteo wants Lucia close because powerful men often ignore medical staff. Nurses become invisible in rooms where men are busy guarding their egos. Lucia rejects the idea immediately. She has no interest in helping him run a trap. But Matteo knows where to press. The same person hunting him may already be reaching toward her and Ethan. Running, he says, will not end this. It will only give the enemy a softer target and more time. Lucia feels every part of herself pulling in different directions. Her instincts tell her to take Ethan and disappear. Her training tells her a threat left standing usually comes back. Escape would not erase the men who tried to kill her in the garage, so she agrees to a reluctant alliance, though every word tastes wrong. Matteo's instructions are simple: stay close, observe, say nothing until she is sure. Then a heated argument in the hallway gives them their first clue. Rico is speaking to a subordinate, his tone too sharp, too bitter. When the door opens, panic flashes across his face for one brief second. For 3 long seconds, Rico freezes. He knows Matteo heard enough. Matteo does not shout. He laughs softly, which somehow makes the room colder. He invites Rico to continue, and the color drains from the man's face. Rico tries to frame it as concern for Matteo's health, but his hand twitches toward his hip, reaching for a weapon that is not there. Matteo catches the movement instantly. Lucia catches it too. The silence afterward is heavy. Rico has not confessed to anything, but something has shifted, and resentment have started showing through the cracks. For a moment, Matteo lets Lucia see what Rico's possible betrayal costs him. It is not just strategy. 10 years of loyalty, shared danger, and survival may be turning into a knife at his back. Beneath the control, he looks tired in a way power cannot hide. When he asks for Lucia's help, she knows how trapped she is. Her custody case is worsening. Her son is exposed, and every path out is blocked by someone else's agenda. She agrees to become his eyes and ears, but sets hard rules: no lies to her, no unnecessary violence around her, and freedom for her and Ethan when this is over. Their uneasy pact begins with a handshake, but Matteo's body is already losing the fight he keeps pretending to win. By day 6, a fever burns through him from an infected surgical wound. He denies it at first, snapping at anyone who suggests rest. Lucia sees the truth in his gray skin and the sweat at his hairline. For 3 painful hours, She cleans dead tissue from the wound while he refuses pain medication, insisting he needs to stay alert. It is stubbornness dressed up as strength. Lucia tells him as much. He glares at her, then grips the chair until his knuckles whiten. By midnight, the fever begins to ease, leaving Matteo exhausted in a way no expensive suit or armed guard can cover. When Lucia tells him to sleep, he says one word, stay. This time it does not sound like an order. It sounds like something he hates needing. Lucia should leave. Professionally, she knows that. Instead, she stays in the chair near his bed and talks quietly to keep him grounded. She mentions Afghanistan with the dark humor soldiers use when the real memories are too ugly to handle directly. He notices that she misses the purpose more than the war, and the observation lands too close. Lucia reminds him that being trapped in his world is not purpose. It is a consequence of doing her job. Matteo, worn down by fever and pain, starts talking about his childhood. His father died when he was 8. Soon after, his mother married one of his father's associates. The man sent Matteo to a harsh military academy where weakness was punished, and boys learned quickly who had power and who did not. By 14, Matteo had learned to watch faces, measure silence, and strike first in small ways before anyone could hurt him openly. He tells the story without asking for pity. Lucia assumes his childhood pulled him into the criminal world, but Matteo corrects her. He did not drift into it. He studied it, then took it. His stepfather mistook silence for obedience, never realizing the boy was mapping the network and waiting for weak points to show. When Matteo finally had enough power to destroy him, he spared him instead. Not out of mercy, he says, but because leaving him alive and irrelevant proved the victory more cleanly. Lucia does not praise him for it. She only listens. That may be why he keeps talking. She is not impressed, not afraid, not trying to use the wound he has shown her. Matteo laughs quietly, not with mockery but with relief that he does not quite know how to hide. Lucia sees him without needing anything from him, and that makes her dangerous in a way he did not expect. When he takes her hand, the fear in his grip feels real. For a brief moment, two damaged people recognize something familiar in each other. But across the city, danger is already moving. Rico meets Vincent Caruso, the organization's old advisor, in a private dining room where vintage wine costs more than Lucia's rent. Vincent listens without blinking as Rico explains that Matteo is becoming attached. Vincent Caruso has survived 30 years in a world built on violence because he understands how to break men from the inside. When Rico complains that Matteo is distracted by Lucia, Vincent immediately sees the opening. Direct attacks have failed, so they choose something colder. They will target Lucia and Ethan. Not because they matter to the organization, but because they matter to Matteo. Rico hesitates for a second. There is still a thin line inside him he has not crossed. Vincent crushes that hesitation with a few quiet words. He wants Matteo grieving, unstable, and reckless. Rico wants power badly enough to listen. Vincent tests Rico, making sure he is willing to go all the way. Rico swallows his fear and chooses ambition. Together they plan to make the safe house look like the site of a gas explosion, wiping away Lucia and Ethan while leaving behind a story the police can accept. Matteo would break, and Rico could step in as the loyal man who restored order. Meanwhile, Matteo lies awake in the dark, unsettled by something more unfamiliar than death, attachment. Caring about Lucia and Ethan has given his enemies a handle. He knows it. And still, by Friday morning, Lucia has to walk into family court. The battlefield changes, but the pressure does not. Lucia wears her late mother's pearl earrings to the custody hearing, touching them once in the hallway like armor. Across the room, Anthony sits beside an expensive lawyer, looking calm in a way that makes her stomach turn. Lucia's hope for basic understanding shrinks under the weight of procedure. Anthony's attorney, Patterson, begins with photographs, black cars outside Lucia's building, Armed men near the hospital, security footage from the ER. He does not need to lie much. He only needs to arrange the truth until it looks like something else. Patterson takes Lucia apart with careful politeness. He paints her not as a victim, but as a mother willingly tied to a criminal organization. Living under Matteo Romano's protection in a fortified location she refuses to name. Patricia argues that Lucia acted only as a nurse, but Patterson lands his sharpest blow. If Lucia is truly a hostage or target, why has she not gone to the authorities? Lucia cannot answer without destroying herself. She cannot say that the authorities have already threatened her custody to force cooperation. The truth sits in her throat, useless while the courtroom waits. Lucia tries to explain that Romano's protection is the only shield she has against people who have already tried to kill her, but courtrooms prefer clean categories, and mob protection looks too much like criminal involvement. Her refusal to reveal where she and Ethan are staying is a mother's attempt to keep her child alive. In court, it looks like evasion. Then Patterson introduces her military records and uses her PTSD against her. The training that helped her save lives becomes evidence of volatility. The nightmares she fought through become proof that she is unsafe. Lucia grips the table to keep her hands from shaking. Lucia says her trauma does not make her an unfit mother. Her voice is steady, but only because she forces it to be. The court treats her instincts like symptoms. Her emergency room actions become signs of recklessness. Her fear becomes instability. Even her refusal to abandon Ethan to danger is framed as poor judgment. Judge Hartwick responds with cool efficiency. Psychological evaluation. Child services investigation. Temporary review of the custody schedule. No one raises their voice. No one sounds cruel. That almost makes it worse. Lucia feels the decision settle over her life like another locked door. Lucia leaves the courtroom feeling stripped bare. Every truth has been turned sideways. Every wound has been made useful to someone else. She pauses in the courthouse bathroom, gripping the edge of the sink until the shaking in her hands slows. For 10 seconds, she lets herself breathe. Then she hears footsteps outside and straightens before anyone can see her break. Brennan and Ortiz are waiting near the courthouse steps, arriving at exactly the moment she is least able to absorb another fight. Their timing says they were counting on it. Lucia is too tired to miss the pattern this time. The detectives fall into their roles perfectly. Ortiz tells her that cooperation could help her custody situation. Brennan reminds her what Matteo Romano has done and how many families have suffered because of him. Lucia hears the argument, but she also hears the manipulation underneath it. The state wants her to betray the one person currently keeping her and Ethan alive. While offering protection it has not proven it can provide. It is a terrible kind of irony. She is trapped between predators with different badges, different rules, and the same willingness to use her son as leverage. The detectives leave her with a threat disguised as an opportunity. At her lowest point, Matteo sends a message promising help. It looks like rescue. It also looks like another door closing behind her. By quietly bringing powerful lawyers into her case, he removes one danger while tightening his place in her life. Patricia warns her that accepting this kind of help could tie her to Matteo in ways the court will notice. Lucia already knows. She sits in the car outside the courthouse, breathing through a cold sweat, caught between refusing him and needing exactly the kind of power he can offer. Lucia's independence is shrinking inch by inch. Whether Matteo threatens her or saves her, he is becoming impossible to ignore. On Sunday, his arrogance shows itself again. He schedules a very public hospital visit for Tuesday at 2 in the afternoon. Rico warns against it, calling the risk unnecessary. But Matteo wants the underworld to see him walking, breathing, and unbroken. Lucia understands the tactic. He is using himself as bait. What angers her is not only the danger to him, but the way men like him make bold moves and assume everyone around them will survive the fallout. Tuesday arrives with clear weather and the ordinary movement of a hospital, pretending nothing dangerous is happening. While reviewing transport documents, Lucia notices something wrong. An order sending Matteo to the 4th floor radiology unit. His scans from 3 days earlier were clean. There is no medical reason to move him. His security team and gets deadlines, one after another. The old warning in her body rises fast. She grabs the file, leaves the nurse's station, and heads straight for Matteo's room. She does not stop to explain herself to anyone. By then, she already knows the trap is moving. Lucia's sudden entrance makes several guards draw their weapons at once. Matteo orders them down before she can be forced backward. She explains the false radiology order, the dead phone lines, the clean scans. Rico dismisses it as a clerical error, but his voice is too smooth, too ready. He tries to make Lucia look paranoid in front of the room. Matteo watches him without blinking. When Lucia adds that the 4th floor has direct rooftop access, the air changes. Matteo turns to Rico, and something silent passes between them. Rico's face does not collapse, not yet, but the first fracture is there. Rico begins to unravel by inches. His hand shakes once before he hides it. His communication line fails when Marco tries to verify the order. Then Marco confirms the hospital never requested new scans. The truth hardens in the room. Matteo asks Rico for an explanation with terrifying calm. Rico knows he is exposed. He draws his gun and shoots Marco before anyone can stop him. In seconds, the room erupts. Guards turn on guards. Hidden loyalties reveal themselves through gunfire. Lucia drops to the floor as bullets tear through walls, glass, and monitors. The hospital becomes a war zone all over again. Under fire, Lucia slips into the narrow focus that once kept people alive in combat. She crawls toward a wounded guard, pressing hard against his bleeding shoulder, while gunfire snaps above her. Her medic instincts and her mother's instincts become the same thing. Keep breathing. Keep moving, keep someone alive. Matteo staggers toward her, his surgical wounds reopening as his body begins to fail. Then the threat rises higher. A sniper appears above the atrium. Lucia sees the angle and throws herself at Matteo, dragging him behind a stone fountain just as the shot cracks through the air. Lucia moves on instinct now. Matteo tries to joke through the pain, but his voice is thin, and she tells him to shut up and hold still. She packs his bleeding wound with torn cloth from her own shirt and tightens it with his belt. Intimacy of the act is impossible to think about, so she does not think. She works. Sofia opens cover fire from the opposite side of the hall. Then Matteo receives another blow. Vincent, his trusted counselor, is part of the betrayal. 6 mercenaries descend into the chaos. Matteo looks at Lucia, and for once he does not seem to know who else to trust. Lucia takes command completely. She orders Matteo to obey her, and for once he does. 7 years away from the military have not erased the old calculations in her body. She sees the helicopter, the fuel tank, the narrow window of opportunity. Her shot sparks an explosion that throws the attackers into confusion. In the smoke and shouting, she gets Matteo to a hidden steel panic room. The door seals behind them, cutting off the gunfire. The silence inside feels too close. Lucia tells him they are even now. Matteo, bleeding and pale against the wall, looks at her as if the word even makes no sense to him. Matteo points out what both of them know. The logical choice would have been to let him die. Lucia hides behind the only answer that still feels safe. She did her job. Matteo does not argue, but he does not fully believe it either. Something has shifted between them in the space between fear and survival. For 3 hours, his estate burns and his men retake control floor by floor. Later, back in the hospital, Matteo plays weakness like a role written for his enemies. He lets them believe he is fading. He knows arrogance will make Vincent and Rico come close enough to expose themselves. Vincent Caruso enters the hospital carrying flowers and a performance of grief. 2 bodyguards follow him. His face is arranged into concern, but his eyes are already measuring the room. Mateo remains isolated on the secure top floor, pale enough to look near death. Rico whispers that Mateo may not last the night, giving Vincent exactly the bait he wants. Vincent begins talking about transition, stability, and the need for loyal men to preserve the organization. Nearby, Lucia records every word from the adjoining medical room. Her hands are steady this time. She knows exactly what kind of evidence they need. After 30 seconds, Lucia enters Mateo's room to keep the illusion alive. Mateo has made himself look convincingly ill, slowing his movements and letting the color drain from his face. Vincent sits beside him with false warmth, urging him to transfer control to Rico until he recovers. When Mateo resists, Vincent's mask begins to slip. Rico blocks the exit, ready for violence. Then Vincent reveals the part he cannot resist saying aloud. He arranged the car accident that killed Mateo's father. The room goes very still. Mateo's eyes change first, not with surprise, with confirmation. Vincent orders Rico to kill Lucia, and his mistake is assuming she is only a civilian. Lucia moves before Rico can finish raising his weapon. She slams a heavy medical cart into him, then uses the narrow space to her advantage, striking hard and fast. Rico lands a blow to her face, but she stays on him, disarming him with joint locks and forcing him down with a scalpel at his throat. Vincent tries to regain control, shouting over the chaos. But Sofia arrives with 6 armed guards. Mateo drops the act, rises from the bed, and smiles without warmth. Vincent finally understands he walked into the trap. The color drains from Vincent's face as the life he built on lies collapses in front of him. Mateo stands before the man who betrayed him and murdered his father. Rico tries one last defense, claiming Mateo has been weakened by Lucia. Mateo rejects it without hesitation. Then he reveals the final piece, a recording of Anthony, Lucia's ex-husband, plotting with Vincent to kidnap Ethan through bribes, false reports, and pressure inside the custody case. Lucia goes numb. Anthony's voice fills the room, calm and familiar. The same voice that once promised to build a home with her. Now it is bargaining over their son. Lucia understands the full shape of the nightmare, and it hurts more than she expected. The custody petition, the sudden accusations, the pressure from every side, all of it had been guided and fed by Vincent's plan. But Anthony had not been a helpless pawn. He recorded the deal as insurance, not out of love for Ethan, but to save himself if the plan failed. Mateo tells Lucia that Anthony has been arrested and the false case will fall apart. She should feel relief. Instead, she feels grief first. The man who once knew her softest places had chosen to aim straight at them. Vincent and Rico are taken away to a place no one describes. By dawn, the purge is over. Immediate threat is gone, and detectives Brennan and Ortiz are being pulled apart by internal affairs. Lucia sits alone in the hospital cafeteria, both hands wrapped around coffee she has not touched. Her body is finally coming down from days of fear, but peace does not arrive cleanly. Mateo joins her, wounded but alive, and keeps his promise. She and Ethan are free to leave. No conditions, no guards forced on them, no hidden debt spoken aloud. Lucia wants to believe him. She is not ready to trust it yet. Mateo offers another choice carefully this time. Stay connected to him, not as a prisoner, not as a dependent, but as an equal ally. Lucia's first instinct is to refuse. She wants a quiet life for Ethan, far from guns, loyalty tests, and men who solve problems with violence. She tells Mateo that saving her now does not erase the way he moved her son without permission. Mateo does not defend himself. That silence matters more than an excuse. 6 weeks later, Lucia is back in Chicago, unpacking what remains of her old life. Then someone knocks. Through the peephole, she sees Mateo standing there in casual clothes and instead of a suit, looking almost uncertain. Matteo is different when she opens the door. Not harmless, never that, but less armored. His posture is easier, and the constant tension around him has softened. Still, Lucia keeps the chain on the door for a few seconds longer than necessary. Matteo notices and does not comment. When she lets him in, he takes in the small mess of family life: Ethan's shoes by the couch, school papers on the table, a half-finished mug of tea near the sink. Over simple coffee, they talk quietly. Matteo says she did not only save his body, she saved something he thought had gone dead years ago. Matteo makes a promise that sounds different from his earlier ones. Lifelong protection, but with no surveillance, no control, no interference unless she asks. If anyone threatens Lucia or Ethan, they will answer for it. But he will not turn their lives into another guarded room. Lucia does not soften quickly. Trauma has taught her that a leash can be made of soft words too. Matteo seems to understand. He does not touch her hand. He does not move closer. He only says she saved his life 3 times and never asked for payment. Now he wants to stand nearby without owning the ground beneath her feet. Lucia sets the rules plainly. Around Ethan, Matteo will be a normal man. No hidden legal moves, no secret guards at school, no decisions made over her head, no protection unless she agrees or there is no time to ask. And if he breaks those rules once, he loses access to both of them. Matteo, who is used to bending rooms to his will, listens without interrupting. Then he smiles and agrees. The moment is strange because there is no threat inside it, only a fragile kind of respect. And Sunday comes and Ethan visits Matteo's estate. The boy's nerves last less than 5 minutes. Soon he is outside with a soccer ball, laughing while grown men pretend badly not to enjoy the game. The backyard scene is almost impossible to reconcile with everything Lucia has seen. Men who usually live around violence and dirty money are cheering for a child, as if this were a family picnic. From a distance, it could still look dangerous. Up close, it is something more complicated, awkward, temporary, almost tender. Matteo stands with Lucy on the terrace and admits the truth. His world has destroyed more than it has built. Hers has kept a child whole through fear, divorce, and chaos. He does not pretend he has become a saint. Lucia would not believe him if he did. But he is trying to protect something innocent without crushing it. Change does not arrive like a miracle. Lucia knows that. Matteo knows it too. Even if he hates admitting anything takes time. For him, change is choosing each day, not to become the coldest version of himself. For Lucia, it is learning that survival does not always have to mean standing alone, though she still keeps one part of herself cautious. Ethan runs up to them, breathless and proud, talking over himself about 2 goals and 1 almost impossible save. His joy is loud, messy, and real. After everything, his heart is still open. Lucia watches him and feels the first small piece of peace settle somewhere inside her. Lucia gently reminds Ethan not to brag too much, and he grins before running back to the game. And this time the words carry no debt, no command, no hidden bargain, just gratitude. A man who built his life on fear has learned, through Lucia, that safety can also come from trust. Neither of them comes out of the storm untouched. There are scars, limits, and questions they cannot answer yet, but they choose to rebuild slowly, without pretending the damage never happened. It is not a perfect ending. It is something quieter, harder, and maybe more honest, a little peace found in the ruins. Every Mafia boss story is not only about power, money, revenge, or fear. Beneath the violence and darkness, there is often a painful human lesson about choices, consequences, loyalty, family, and the price of ambition. This story reminds us that no matter how powerful a person becomes, no one can escape the truth forever. Hundreds of people, and make others tremble at the sound of his name. But if his heart is empty, his victory is never complete. The Mafia boss in this story represents a man who built his life on control. He believed that fear was stronger than love, that silence was safer than honesty, and that power could protect him from pain. For years, he may have won every battle in the streets, in business, and among his enemies. But the most important battle was never outside him. It was inside his own heart. That is where he truly lost himself. One of the most meaningful lessons from this story is that power without morality becomes a prison. Many people dream of becoming rich, respected, or feared. They think success means having control over others. But real success is not measured by how many people obey you. It is measured by how many lives you protect, how much peace you create, and how much good remains after you are gone. The Mafia boss had money, influence, and protection, but he did not have peace. His life shows us that a person can be surrounded by luxury and still feel completely alone. Another important lesson is that loyalty is valuable, but blind loyalty can destroy lives. In the world of crime, loyalty is often treated like the highest law. People are expected to follow orders without question. Never mean giving up your conscience. A loyal person does not simply protect someone's secrets. A loyal person also has the courage to stop someone from destroying themselves. This story teaches us that loyalty without honesty is dangerous. Real loyalty should be connected to truth, respect, and moral responsibility. The story also shows the heavy cost of revenge. Revenge often feels powerful in the beginning. It gives a person the illusion that pain can be answered with pain, but revenge rarely heals anything. Instead, it creates a chain of suffering that keeps growing. One act of revenge leads to another. One betrayal leads to another. In the end, everyone loses something. The Mafia boss may have believed that revenge would restore his honor, but what it truly did was steal his humanity piece by piece. This is a powerful reminder that forgiveness is not weakness. Sometimes, forgiveness is the strongest decision a person can make because it breaks the cycle of hatred. Family is another central lesson in this kind of story. Many mafia bosses claim they do everything for family. They say they commit crimes to protect the people they love. But protection without honesty can become another form of harm. A family does not only need money or security. A family needs trust, emotional safety, and love that is not poisoned by fear. If a father, husband, brother, or son becomes powerful but loses the ability to show tenderness, then his family may live in a beautiful house, but still feel trapped inside it. This story reminds us that children and loved ones often pay the price for the choices of powerful men. The mafia boss may think his decisions only affect his enemies, but every secret, every violent act, and every betrayal leaves a shadow over the innocent people around him. That is why one of the strongest educational messages is this: before making a decision, we must ask ourselves who will suffer because of it. A selfish choice may bring temporary success, but it can create long-term pain for the people we love most. Another meaningful point is the danger of pride. Pride can make a person refuse to apologize, refuse to change, and refuse to admit they are wrong. The mafia boss may have spent years believing that saying sorry would make him look weak, but in reality, the ability to apologize is a sign of strength. It takes courage to face the damage we have caused. It takes maturity to admit that we hurt someone, and it takes true character to change before it is too late. The story also teaches that redemption is possible, but it always requires sacrifice. A person cannot simply say they have changed. They must prove it through action. Redemption means accepting responsibility, protecting the innocent, telling the truth, and sometimes losing everything that was built on lies. For a mafia boss, redemption may mean walking away from power, exposing corruption, saving someone he once endangered, or choosing love over control. The path to redemption is painful, because it forces a person to confront the worst parts of themselves. But it is also the only path that can lead to peace. From a human perspective, this story is powerful because it shows that even the hardest heart can still feel pain. Behind the cold eyes of a mafia boss, there may be regret, loneliness, childhood wounds, or a deep fear of being betrayed. This does not excuse his actions, but it helps us understand that broken people often break others when they never learn how to heal. The educational value here is important. Pain should not become an excuse to hurt people. Instead, pain should become a reason to grow, to seek wisdom, and to choose a better path. For viewers, the lesson is not to admire the criminal lifestyle, but to understand its emptiness. The suits, cars, mansions, and power may look attractive from the outside, but behind them there is often fear, guilt, and loss. A life built on violence can never bring true happiness. A life built on lies can never bring true freedom. And a life built on fear can never create real love. In the end, the story of a mafia boss is really a warning. It warns us that every choice has a consequence. It warns us that money cannot buy peace. It warns us that fear cannot replace respect. It warns us that revenge cannot heal a wounded heart. Most importantly, it reminds us that the greatest power a person can have is not the power to control others, but the power to control themselves. The deepest lesson is simple but meaningful. Choose character over pride, love over control, truth over silence, and forgiveness over revenge. No matter how dark a person's past may be, change is possible when they are willing to face the truth. But the longer someone waits, the higher the price becomes. A mafia boss may win the streets, defeat his enemies, and build an empire, but if he loses his soul, he has lost everything. True strength is not found in violence. True strength is found in responsibility, compassion, humility, and the courage to become better before it is too late.